Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a priest! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell Killer!
Our guest today wears two hats at the Parramatta Eels. He's the Elite Pathways Coaching Director, and he's also the head coach for the Parramatta Eels NRLW team. This, of course, means we can speak to him about both programs. Steve Georgallis, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Firstly, Steve, congrats on what must be considered a very productive first year in your dual roles. How do you reflect back on 2024?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's the first time I've ever done a coaching pathways director's role, and I try to let the coaches coach and just provided my experience, make sure they were prepared for their training sessions, and, sat in on their halftime speeches and their full-time speeches, and just gave advice because obviously I'd been there before. I coached SG Ball and Jersey Flegg and New South Wales Cup before I became an assistant and first grade coach. So, there was a lot of experience there that I could pass on, and a lot of mistakes that I made, which you do when you first start out coaching. And yeah, it was just was interesting. I suppose the most difficult thing was knowing the players' names, and putting them to faces. As you know, we've got one of the biggest pathways in the NRL. You've got the Mats, the Ball, Jersey Flegg, and then on the girls' side you've got the Fiola and Tasha Gale, and then we had the Harvey Norman this year, and obviously I coached the NRLW, so it was 200 odd names you had to sort of remember, and I got a few names wrong here and there, and they let me know about it.
I mean, if you start talking about the summer squads for the rep teams as well, those numbers just go through the roof.
Yeah, all the talent
with
squads.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
It feels pretty crazy to talk about it, given that we're a week out from Christmas as we sit down and record, but it's just over a month till the start of the kickoff of the 2025 junior rep season. So let's start with these programs. The big leap forward from a coaching perspective is that 4 of the coaches are employed full-time now by the Parramatta Eels. What does that change bring to the preparation for those squads?
Oh, look, I think it allows them to prepare. They're not worried about being at work and then trying to organise their training sessions and send them to me, and prepare for training sessions and understand the players, get to know the players, and then I have access to them here, and they always ask me questions, and we can have a chat here. Whereas, at the moment, the only coach, Shah Henry's got the Tasha Gale, so we're on the phone, or I'm at our sessions and we have a chat and we talk about training and players. But to have access to the other coaches here, and I think it's a big plus for the players, and them allowing to be full time is a great thing that the club's done. And as you both know, they've invested so much in the pathways, and the players of the Parramatta area, should be very grateful that they've got coaches of that standard that are full time.
It's hard to see as anything but a positive, isn't it, 60s? Because we've been fortunate enough in years gone by to be privy to a bit of what goes behind the scenes of like the SG Ball. It's full on. These are kids that are getting ready to step into the senior pathways from there. So having full-time coaches will be a big boon, I think.
Oh, definitely. As I said before, it's a big plus for the Parramatta pathway system.
So focusing on those coaches themselves, Steve, with their involvement that they've been able to get in the NRL pre-season, their professional development must be on an incredible journey right now.
Yeah, Jason Riles has been fantastic. He's allowed the coaches to come out, and view the training session, take notes. They've got access to the training on video. They can cut clips up and show their assistant coaches that aren't full-time, their players, and on some instances the coaches have been actually involved in the NRL training sessions. So it's Jason's been really good that way.
And of course the weather was the perfect time for it, but the junior rep squads played their first trials on the weekend against the Canberra Raiders. Were coaches and staff happy with what they saw in the first hit out of the preseason?
Yeah, look, the majority of the coaches were happy. Probably not Josh Hodgson with the mats because their completion rate was very poor, and he probably didn't get to see enough of the players that were train and trial, trialing out for spots. The majority of the squads, the players that were, vying for positions in teams were given the most minutes, and obviously the players that were contracted or we know a lot about were rested for that game. And in January, obviously, there's another 2 trials against the Bulldogs and the Panthers. You'll probably see some of those contracted players play probably more towards the end, last trial before they round 1 game.
We talk about it with the NRL boys 60s, but obviously there's a Christmas break coming up, and you talk about your sort of the 2 halves of the preseason and the messaging across Christmas. What sort of things do you tell the boys and the girls across Christmas when they go home to their family? Like, obviously, keep training, stay in shape. Is there anything else that goes along there, or is it pretty basic?
Yeah, well, there's not too much emphasis on training and keeping shape. It's about spending a bit of time with family because it's going to be very full on when they come back. Well, they're coming back, the 2nd, 3rd of January, and Friday training session. Then got the first trial.
And then it's just go into the actual season.
So it's it's just about rejuvenating, spending a bit of time with family. Not enjoying Christmas too much, but
pretty wholesome message there. Just to enjoy it with the family. I like it.
Yeah, and there is a training plan that they'll have, but it won't be as full on as what they've been doing. So it'll be a little bit of a break, but majority of the time players come back fit because they know that if they don't, they're going to miss their spot.
Yeah, behind the 8 ball, and then you're out. Yeah.
So just again looking back on 2024, there were 4 junior rep Eels that were selected in the Australian Schoolboys team. The club recently announced the contract retentions for 3 of them, Ryder Talangi, Lockie Kanikas and Lincoln Fletcher. How important was it to get those deals done for those young players?
Oh, it's very important. Those players also understand the culture at Parramatta and the opportunities that Parramatta give those players. But it was really important that we did lock them in because, they've got plenty of clubs out there that don't have the junior pathways or the players that we have in this area, and they're always looking to, convince those players to come across to their team. And, in the last few years, probably lost a few players, but, that's football. That's, but, again, very important that we've kept those 3 players.
Yeah, because it was a fair representation for players in, the 17, 18 players in that Australian Schoolboys squad.
Yeah, well, you consider that there's 17 NRL teams, and you would think 1 player per team.
Yeah.
We had 4, so it's, it is a good percentage.
And then at the conclusion of the junior rep program last year in 2024, we saw a number of players elevated to both the Jersey Flegg and the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership because there is no under-21s on the ladies' side right now. They go straight to reserve grade. The Jersey Flegg actually stormed home in the second half of the season and were playing like a house on fire, only to narrowly miss the finals by just the 1 game. Were you pleased with how those players responded to the elevations and the challenges presented to them in those new grades?
Yeah, it's fantastic that those players from SG Ball can make the step up to Jersey Flegg and actually play well. Jordan Rankin was really happy with some of those players that came up from the ball to the flag. But I think for Jordan, he was most pleased the fact that they didn't start well. He didn't change the way he was coaching.
Stuck to his convictions.
Yeah, he stuck to what systems that, and he knew they would work. And we'd have a lot of conversations about it that they needed to change, and they did. And then as soon as they realised that it was working, week in, week out, they were performing, and they were very unlucky to miss. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of teams looking around and going, I hope this team doesn't make the finals.
On a weekly basis, when we were sort of doing our breakdown of every game, we were saying that the finals had the teams looking over their shoulders, worrying if we're going to get there, and we just missed out. And I think there was a result against Canberra that probably, you go back and look at the...
just the ending of that game against the Raiders.
That was probably the difference between...
Just let it slip, and that ended up being the difference.
They played some good football. They, as a team, they played some fantastic football. 0-7, wasn't it, 60s?
It was... what was it?
0-6 or 0-7, I think.
0-7 to start the year. Yeah, 0-7 to start the year.
And then I think it was like 12-3 or 12-4 after that. It was very impressive stuff. So, yeah, it was a damn shame they missed the finals, but they played some great football.
And I suppose the flip side to that is in the junior reps, you've only got 11 rounds, 10 rounds, so you can't really start poorly.
Yeah. One drop game early in the junior reps can put you so far behind. And obviously with the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership, it was a very young team. A lot of young talent there, but it was very much a learning process for them in the first season, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And you've got to look at the NRLW and the Harvey Norman and realise that predominantly when the Harvey Norman was played, the NRLW players would drop back to Harvey Norman, play that, and then
it was
the back end of the
completely
year,
different system this year gone by.
So they had to find players. So unfortunately, you had some players there that shouldn't have been playing Harvey Norman, from Lisa Fiola. It was probably a reflection of the fact that there wasn't enough players of quality. But you'll see in the next 2 or 3 years players coming through, and the Harvey Norman will
that system will sort of
stronger.
find its footing. Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, that's really. It's a case of they're being pushed ahead of their time, wasn't it?
Definitely.
But that was true of the NRLW in its inception too. It's just when you got a new competition or new teams coming to a competition, it takes those couple of foundational years to get everything going.
Yeah.
And just speaking about players, moving up, there's a host of Pathways players or graduates from Pathways who are participating in the NRL preseason. Obviously, there's a range of ways that they are. They're either doing a partial preseason or a full preseason. But what sort of feedback have you had about them from the NRL staff?
Yeah, they're very happy with the players that have gone up. It's interesting because I've been to a few clubs, and sometimes those players can be a distraction, or they're not up to the standard of the NRL training. But majority of the feedback that I've got is the players are up to the standard, and they're competing with the NRL players, which is great. But you know what players are like. When you're competing against an NRL player and you're a young kid, and you're trying to show your best. So the coaching staff is very happy with those players.
Good.
It's great to hear. Now, we mentioned at the top that, of course, you wear 2 hats at the club, both as the junior development side of things and then the NRLW side of things. So let's swap hats and go to the NRLW program. And we need to firstly look at the retention recruitment because, and this is something that I spoke with you about recently on our podcast, was that last time expansion came to NRLW, which was when the Raiders, Sharks and Tigers joined the competition, the Eels got hit pretty hard. Our sort of team got scooped up. That was a team that came off the back of that premiership loss to Newcastle, and they got pulled apart. It's the complete opposite this time, though. We've got 2 new teams coming, or 1 team returning, 1 new team coming in the Warriors and the Bulldogs. And we've had a suite of re-signings, and it's been punctuated by a pair of really aggressive international acquisitions in Paige Travis and Martha Mattielli. It feels like there's been a huge buy-in from your players to make that big step into 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, I think winning games and players being happy predominantly means they're going to stay. And when I looked at the squad, I did say that I'd probably I don't know, it might have been a chat that we had before, that I probably would wait till round 6 to see the players that I had and what I needed, and the majority of the players obviously exceeded expectations during the year, considering that we'd got the wooden spoon the last 1 or 2 years. But I was very happy with the players that we've retained. It's interesting, we have a lot of older players, and then we have a lot of younger players, and we don't have that mid-range.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things I looked at. Obviously Paige and Martha are both 25, 26, that mid-range.
That really fit that.
So that they're going to help. They've got Paige has got a lot of games behind her, and so has Martha in the rugby union. So I'm really looking forward to them, when they start. And they both seem very good characters as well. And I think it was last week we had a bit of a Christmas get-together with the NRLW players, and we had both those players online, and the girls got to know them. So it's going to be an interesting year next year, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I suppose you've given me a good breakdown of them both already, but Martha is a Silver Fern, comes from Kiwi Union and has played Super Rugby there, and Paige obviously from the English branch of things. Was there anything that really jumped out that led to your sort of chase and recruitment, the identification process for those two? Was it just, obviously you mentioned that not mid-tier in terms of talent, but in terms of age, that mid-slot in the roster was a big part of it. Anything else that jumped out?
Yeah, well, Rosie Kelly, when she came, she brought that professionalism from rugby union, about playing to standards, training to standards, and she was the one that said to me, there's another girl that would like to come across, Martha. And then I, again, jumped online, had a chat with Kate Mullally, Kate Parkinson and myself. We had a bit of a talk to her and realised that she was the same. She was, she had certain standards that she wanted to play when. She wanted to try in the NRLW, and I was looking for a winger that was, would bring the ball back, was a bit more aggressive, and obviously could get us on the front foot. Not to say that our wingers hadn't done that, but just looking for someone that would do that, and so that's probably what led me to, signing Martha, and then Paige. I just watched a few of her games, and her leg speed and, her feet around a ruck, and she's aggressive when she tackles and she uses her shoulder. So I was looking at someone like a middle that had good leg speed, and obviously...
So like a bit of a Cam Murray sort of...
Yeah, and, complement the pack that we've already got. So that was the reason that we signed her. But both players did, the background check on them. Both players love training, love to set the standard, compete at training, compete in games, which is probably the most important thing in rugby league.
And we've seen, obviously, both in the NRL and NRLW, the importance of those wingers that can set that tone early. I mean, Penrith's four-peat has been not solely built, obviously, but what their wingers do to start the sets has been huge for keeping them ahead of the game.
And NRLW
Yeah,
basically.
obviously, you look at the Roosters, you look at Newcastle with the work that their back three has done, the Broncos in their prime as well. So starting those sets strongly will be huge.
And just on the team itself this year, the 5 wins that occurred in that part in 2024 far exceeded the results that we'd had in any previous year. Even the year that we made the grand final, that was, there was 6 teams, and we got into the grand final on 2 wins. How did you assess the team's performance on a whole in 2024? Yeah,
I think the biggest thing is they were fitter, which allowed them to compete longer in games. There was obviously the St George game, the Newcastle game, the last game that we played, the Roosters, where we competed probably for 30 minutes. And the other parts of the game, the teams got on top. But I knew that was going to happen, because you can't be up for a long period after coming, off a wooden spoon the previous year. So those players that the club obviously had brought from other teams that were already here could obviously play, but they probably weren't fit enough. So fitness was a big component of our training last year, and it'll be another big component of our training going forward. But the NRLW is, it's the intensity is obviously lifting every year, and it's getting. I wouldn't say it's as close to the men's game, but in relation to the way that women play sport, it's probably the most intense sport at the moment.
I've said this before when John and I have spoken about NRLW. I think it's in the position where it's the best female contact sport in the world.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because we were playing at Cowboys, and I said the same thing at halftime. I actually said to him, you are playing in the hardest sport in the world. Yeah. And at the hardest level, this is the best level that you're ever going to play. Other than obviously international football, but the NRLW is the number one sport for contact, and for me, I think our girls got to a point where they started to understand that, and I think that's how they played, and that's how we got our 5 wins. And unlucky not to beat Cronulla as well.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And that's another one, kind of like in the Jersey Flegg. We mentioned that Canberra game, but that Cronulla game, just this balance of the season swings completely on that. You actually leapfrog at the end of the year, but I think that on a whole, it was a great season, though. Like, you really
I was very happy with the season, and so were the girls, the coaching staff. And again, I suppose the most important thing is we all had a good time.
And from
that was actually
yeah,
obvious in the
exactly.
in the in the press conferences afterwards. It was you certainly enjoyed the wins when they were there.
Yeah. Well, you got to enjoy the wins.
Oh yeah. Hey, you know what? If you can't celebrate a win, when are you going to celebrate?
But I think, again, outside looking in from our perspective, most impressive for me was you have an explosive start, you jump out of the block, get a number of wins on your belt, narrowly lose to Cronulla, then you have to take your lumps. Oh, you mentioned that Newcastle game. That was a very bizarre process because the game was delayed by about an hour because of the logistical issues behind that, and then the Dragons ambush you. And at that point, it could have been very easy to drop your heads and sort of slink away for the rest of the season, but they bounced back.
Yeah, and they did, and we lost Kennedy, I think about round 6.
Yeah.
Obviously lost Ruben and Boss, Capo, and
and that was
round
where,
one,
that's what I was going to ask you next. Is like the injuries were brutal early on.
Yeah,
both the Kennedy girls, Boss, Kapoor. So you had huge setbacks to your starting team, and while that is obviously a big dampener on your top resources, injuries always do open the door for young talent and fringe players to step in and take a chance. And we saw Rory Owen and Chloe Jackson really emerge last year. Rory in particular was incredible. Denied Dalian Rookie of the Year selection due to technicalities, but she ended up going on to play for the Prime Minister's 13 and scored a couple of tries up there in Papua New Guinea. With recruitment and retention and the return of injury of some stars in that vein, the depth chart is looking outstanding, and it looks like you have some serious competition for places next year.
Yeah, and that's what you want. When you're playing at the highest level of sport, you want competition for spots. And when you have competitions for spots, everyone's playing at their best or training at their best to get that spot. And no, you're right. Even Rory Owen wasn't one of the centres that we had down to start the season. I think we had Mia Middleton and Lindsay Tui, and then Lindsay broke her jaw under 19s New South Wales game, and Mia did a shoulder in the first trial, which opened up the space for Rory Owen, and obviously Rosie Kelly as well, who had come from New Zealand, and she's not a centre, she's more a fly half or a fullback. So you're right, you're spot on. And then I remember Rory Owen's first game, and she was very nervous, but you wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
No. She, out there it looks like she uses confidence, and it just looked like this was the most incredible thing, that she'd come across from rugby union, and yet she looked like she'd been playing rugby league all of her life. That's maybe as a layman's observation. As a coach, you might have, seen it a little bit differently, and you can pick up this or that you need to fine tune with her. But just the way she was standing up players,
the confidence to back herself in the midfield.
It really was like backing herself in a big way.
She has a lot of natural ability and talent, but she is one player that continually asks questions about her position, and defensively, whether it be defensively attacked. But I suppose if you go back to the game against the Titans, and I'm still scratching my head how she did it, but the way she just went in and away and made the fullback
who is not a chump player by any means.
Scored that try.
Rep tier player right there, and to go 60 plus 70 metres.
Yes, and that's one thing you can't coach.
No. It's yes, but we've just spoken about these emerging young players, but Abby Church, Mahalia Murphy had outstanding years and were recognised by the Australian selectors. That must have been pleasing for you as well. Abby as well with the Dally M.
Yeah, going so close.
Yeah, so close with
and
that.
The recognition from her peers watching that event on Fox, just seeing how many players, like star players, were just shouting at Abby in the season she had was, again, as a fan, was very rewarding. Got to imagine as a player and as the staff and the team, we must have been really chuffed.
It's interesting because Mahalia was the captain and Abby was the vice captain, and that leadership obviously reflected in the way they played, and they deserve their spots. And obviously, I don't know if Abby got the Dally M. She was very nervous. We were talking about it the next day, and she said, she couldn't believe it. She could not believe it, but all of us could believe it. And she had a great year and very competitive throughout the year. And Mahalia led from she went into that last game against the Roosters with a rib injury, but she played the whole game, and she was she deserved her opportunity. the Australian team. Yeah.
We mentioned it with the Harold Matthews trial just then, but the Harvey Norman women's premiership side was young and talented, and we spoke about that, but they're probably their own worst enemies. And we see this a lot with both young teams and new teams, that the compounding errors tend to be their own worst enemies. Is that the nature of just those new programs? And as a coach, how do you go about trying to tidy that up?
Yeah, well, look, it was interesting for them because they first had Scotty Favour as their coach, and then Scotty left, I think, 4 or 5 games into the Harvey Norman season. So then Mickey Withers took over, and then we had a few injuries in the NRLW, so that means that the players that were playing Harvey Norman had to come up.
Yep.
So yeah, you're right. Combinations, and players getting used to each other. The other teams had kept their team, their 13 on the field week in, week out, which is predominantly, if you can do that, you're going to start getting your combinations and winning games. So, yeah, it was a tough year for them, but massive learning curve for all of those younger players. They got that opportunity that probably may not have if the Harvey Norman had been at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, because when they held on to the ball, they played some good football.
Yeah.
It's just...
I mean, it's just, again, it's just getting those combinations going and knowing the player that you're playing with and beside.
So, keeping with that theme, will you get the opportunity to introduce the young female pathways players to NRLW training, just like the NRL program does? And if so, have you already identified those players, or is that a call that's going to be made, say, at the conclusion of the junior rep season?
Oh, look, you've got 4 development players in the NRLW that will play Harvey Norman. So, I mean, you've got River Lealo that played New South Wales under 9s last year, and she's second year Tasha Gale, so she'll jump in the development squad. And we've got a few other younger players there that will, progress to the Harvey Norman once the Tasha Gale season's finished. So, they'll get that opportunity. And the first 2 weeks of preseason, the Harvey Norman will train with the NRLW with some of those younger players. So they'll get the opportunity to, train beside their heroes or their NRLW players that they've looked up to. So, there's a few there.
Yep.
Now, we're not going to put you on the spot and talking up a finals place for next year, so leave all the rah-rah stuff to us, and we'll hype up the team when we do our stuff next year, because we're going to be completely all over that. But, as a coach, and given everything that's happened from what we saw last season, not last year, we're still in 2024, and then, the recruitment, the retention, what are your expectations for the team next year?
Oh, look, for me, if we can keep our top, 13 players on the field week in, week out, I would be disappointed if we didn't make the finals. But then you get a few injuries and then it becomes more difficult. But as you said before, earlier in the program, that we've got a bit of depth this year, so we can allow... We don't want injuries, but they're part and parcel of the game. But I'd be disappointed if we didn't make the finals next season. But I'm not going to say anything else.
Steve, thank you for your time. We always love having a catch-up because you are so generous, mate. And I think all our listeners and readers will be very happy to hear the updates on both the junior and NRLW and beyond pathways today. In the meantime, you've got plenty to do, so I'm going to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and keep well and on top of things, mate.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you both, and we'll see you in the new year.
Yeah, we'll look forward to our chats during the junior rep season.
Yeah, hopefully the squads will be a little bit less, and I'll know more of the players.
Thanks, mate.
See you, mate.
Thank you.